She's divorcing him. At her age, how stupid can you be? That's what my husband said about my best friend. So I decided to make him single too. It all started on a quiet Thursday morning. I had just turned off the stove, about to pour myself a cup of coffee, when my phone rang. It was Adam Grace's son. His voice was shaky. "Aunt Linda, please. Mom's talking about divorcing Dad. She won't talk to us. Can you come over? You're the only one she listens to." I didn't even think. I grabbed my coat, slipped on the nearest shoes, and drove straight to their house. My heart was pounding. Grace and I had been best friends for over 3 decades. We'd been through marriages, pregnancies, funerals. But divorce. This was new. Adam rushed to the door the moment he saw me. "Thank God you're here," he whispered, gripping my hand. Everything was fine until last night. Then she just snapped. I stepped inside and immediately heard the yelling. Tom, her husband, was pacing in the living room, red in the face, shouting, "All I said was the soup was salty, and now she wants a damn divorce." And there she was, Grace, sitting on the couch, arms folded, her face unreadable. He turned to me like I was back up. "Linda, tell me I'm not crazy. Is this what we've come to now?" I didn't answer, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't so sure she was wrong. That night, after dinner, I told Charles what happened. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be concerned, or at least surprised. Grace and I weren't just old friends. We were practically sisters. What happened to her could happen to any of us. I thought he'd understand that. Instead, he leaned back on the couch, one arm slung over the back like he owned the whole damn world, and sneered. "She's divorcing him at her age. How stupid can you be?" He said it like he was commenting on the weather. Casual, cold, and he meant every word, with full contempt. I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. But he didn't stop there. "You women hit a certain age and just lose it. 30 years of marriage and she throws it all away. For what, some fantasy of being young and free again?" He shook his head, chuckling. "It's pathetic. Grace was always a bit dramatic, but this is just sad." My hands were resting in my lap, but they started to curl slowly into fists. Then came the sentence that did it. "You better not catch that bug, Linda. That bug." As if Grace's awakening, her courage, her refusal to keep suffering in silence, was some kind of virus. Something I might catch if I wasn't careful. I stared at him, not moving, not breathing. And in that stillness, I heard something else. That voice, that tone, that same bitter flavor behind his words. I'd heard it before, when I tried to start an online art class a few years ago. "Why bother at your age?" he had said, when I suggested we travel somewhere new. "What for? We've seen enough." When I cut my hair short and wore that new red blouse. "Trying a bit too hard, aren't you?" He hadn't just mocked Grace. He'd been mocking me, for years, and I let him. I smiled through it, laughed it off, pushed it down. Because that's what I was taught to do. Be the calm one. The reasonable one. The forgiving one. But something inside me cracked that night. Not because of Grace, but because I realized I'd been living a version of her story all along. She just had the guts to call it what it was. And suddenly, her decision didn't feel impulsive or dramatic. It felt right. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I let myself wonder, what if I stopped laughing along? What if I stopped forgiving everything? What if I caught that bug after all? That night, I couldn't sleep. Charles's words played over and over in my head like a broken record. "At her age, how stupid can you be? You better not catch that bug. I stared at the ceiling, trying to will myself into numbness. But it was no use. His voice dragged up something I thought I'd buried for good. Something I never dared speak aloud, not even to Grace. It was 10 years ago. His mother had fallen ill. Hospitalized for weeks, and Charles, as always, was too busy with work. He was up for a promotion, of course. Couldn't be away from the office. So, I picked up the slack. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., pack our son's lunch, get to work, visit the hospital during lunch breaks, come home, cook, clean, check homework, sleep 3 hours, and do it all again the next day. I didn't complain. I thought I was being a good wife. And Charles. He made exactly one hospital visit. That was all it took. Her name was Natalie, a young nurse fresh out of school. Pretty, sweet, too sweet. At first I thought he was being considerate, telling me not to exhaust myself, saying he'd stay at the office overnight to handle things. I actually believed he was protecting me, looking out for me. What a joke. A year later, Natalie came knocking at our door, pregnant, demanding answers. She stood in our living room, hands on her swollen belly, saying things like, "He said he loved me. He said he'd leave you." Charles went pale, fell to his knees like a man begging for his life. "I made a mistake," he cried. "It didn't mean anything. I didn't want it to go this far. I should have thrown him out that night. But our son was about to enter high school. He adored his father, worshipped him even. I couldn't break that illusion. Not when he needed stability most." Natalie threatened to go public. Said if I didn't step aside, she'd ruin everything. So I did the only thing I could. I wrote her a check for $80,000. Told her to leave. Told her to disappear. She lost the baby in a minor car accident a few weeks later. Charles didn't even visit the hospital. Just sent flowers and moved on, like none of it had ever happened. And me, I smiled. I moved forward. I told myself it was over. But the truth is, I never healed. I just learned to limp with it. Built a life around a splinter buried too deep to pull out. Smiled through every dinner party. Played the doting wife. Pretended I'd forgotten. But I hadn't. Not really. And that night, lying beside the man who once sold me out for a nurse in white scrubs, I finally asked myself, why had I stayed so long in a house that had been empty of love for years? It started with a grocery bill that didn't add up. Then a missing transaction. Just a few $100s here and there. Nothing big enough to scream over, but enough to itch at the back of my mind. So I dug deeper. There they were. Transfers to a name I hadn't seen in years. NR. At first, I thought no, it couldn't be. Not after all this time. But deep down, I knew exactly who it was. Natalie, the nurse, the one I paid to disappear. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, some bank glitch, but the doubt was louder now than the denial. I waited until dinner the next day. Waited until Eric, our son, was over helping Charles with something on the porch. When we were alone in the kitchen, I asked him, "Do you know who Natalie Reynolds is?" He didn't even blink. Didn't even pretend. "Yeah, that's the nurse right from when I was little." I stared at him. "How do you know that?" He shrugged. "I saw Dad give her groceries once. Years ago." I asked him. He told me she was going through a hard time. That he was just helping out. Helping out. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from shaking. "And you didn't think to tell me Eric looked down." "I didn't think it was a big deal. He said you knew. That it was over." Of course he did. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there in my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger in a life I built. Everyone knew. Except me. Again. I called Grace the next morning. I didn't even know what I wanted to say, just that I needed to see her. She told me to come over, and when I arrived, she was already on the porch, 2 glasses of wine waiting. We didn't talk much at first, just sat there, watching the sun drift lower behind her neighbor's rooftop, birds chirping like nothing in the world was wrong. Then as the light faded, she finally turned to me. Her eyes were tired but clear, like a woman who had already cried all her tears and found something stronger underneath. "We've spent our whole lives being strong for them," she said softly. "Our husbands, our kids, our in-laws, everyone. We hold it all together while they tear it apart." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She reached out, placed her hand on mine. "Isn't it time we're strong for ourselves?" That line. It hit me like a slap to the soul. I nodded, not trusting my voice, because I knew she was right. I had been quiet for too long, smiling through dinners, folding laundry while bleeding inside. I thought being silent was strength. But it wasn't strength. It was survival. So that night after I got home, I didn't confront Charles. I didn't throw plates. I didn't accuse. I simply started preparing. I pulled out our marriage documents, looked up lawyers online. I reviewed the deed to our house, the names on our joint accounts. I met with an attorney quietly, scheduled appointments while Charles was out fishing or napping on the couch. I transferred what I could, consulted a financial advisor, moved some savings into a private account, one step at a time. He didn't notice a thing, because I played my role, smiled at the dinner table, washed the dishes, nodded at his stories. But behind every smile, I was getting closer, closer to the door, closer to the day I'd walk through it, closer to the woman I used to be before I gave her up for a man who didn't deserve her. And for once, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just planned. And oh, how powerful it felt to finally move in silence for me. I waited for the right moment. It came on a Sunday afternoon when Eric and his wife Julia came over for lunch like they always did. I made pot roast his favorite, set the table, lit the candles. I wanted everything to feel normal, at least for a few more minutes. We were halfway through dessert when I put down my fork, looked up, and said it. "I've decided to divorce your father." Silence. Complete echoing silence. Eric blinked. Julia's spoon stopped midair. They both stared at me like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. "Wait." "What?" Eric asked, almost laughing. "You're joking, right?" "I'm not," I said calmly. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." "Mom?" he said, his voice shifting, hardening seriously. "Divorce? At your age?" That sentence, the way he said it, just like his father. Like I had some expiration date on freedom. Like life was already over for me, and I should be grateful just to exist in the corner. I didn't flinch. I smiled. A soft, sharp smile. "Your father gave everything to another woman. What exactly did he leave for me?" Eric opened his mouth, then closed it. Julia looked down at her plate. "I stayed quiet for years," I continued. "I stayed because of you. I stayed because I didn't want to break our family. I paid off his mistress. I held this house together with my bare hands, and in return, he lied. He hid. He kept her in the background all this time." Julia tried to intervene, her voice gentle. "Maybe there's still a way to fix things. He's older now. Maybe he regrets regret." I cut in. "Means nothing without change. And he hasn't changed. He just got better at hiding it." Eric ran a hand through his hair. "But divorce? Now, after all these years, what about retirement, the house, the grandkids? This is a lot." "Exactly," I said. "It's already been a lot. For me, But no one ever asked how I felt. Everyone just assumed I'd keep absorbing the damage. He looked up, eyes softer. Is this really what you want? It's what I need. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said gently. Just understand, I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you because I love you. But I won't keep dying a little more each day, just to make everyone else comfortable. The room stayed quiet for a long time. I could feel their shock, their confusion, maybe even their fear. But for the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid. Because I had finally said it, out loud, and there was no turning back. It was supposed to be a peaceful afternoon. I had just finished yoga with Grace, picked up an iced tea, and decided to take a walk through the park before heading home. The sun was warm, birds chirping, kids playing, and then I saw them, Charles, Natalie, sitting side by side on a bench under the sycamore tree. She was laughing, leaning in a little too close, adjusting the collar of his shirt, like they were a married couple on vacation. He looked relaxed, pleased with himself, like nothing in the world could touch him. I froze, for just a second. Then I kept walking, right up to them. I didn't hesitate. He looked up, and I could see it in his eyes the instant he realized I was there. Too late. I raised my cup, and without saying a word, poured my cold tea straight into his lap. He gasped and jumped up, stumbling backward like a guilty child caught red-handed. Oh, you're comfortable being seen with her in public now, I said, my voice calm but cutting. Good. You'll be single soon. Natalie's eyes widened. She tried to stand to explain, to smile through the humiliation, but I wasn't looking at her. My eyes were locked on Charles, and then Grace arrived. She crossed her arms, her voice cool as steel. Nice to see old habits die hard, huh? Charles' people around us had started watching. Phones out, whispers spreading like wildfire. Charles opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Just a thin, breathless silence. Because this time, he had no story to cover him, no lies to hide behind. He couldn't even run, and I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth had already done it for me. After that scene in the park, there was no turning back. Not even a question of if anymore, only when. Charles came home that night with fire in his eyes and desperation in his voice. First he yelled, "You humiliated me in public. Are you proud of yourself?" Then he begged, "Don't throw away everything we've built. Please, let's talk." And finally, he turned to guilt. "You're going to break this family. You're going to ruin our name." "What will people say?" I said nothing, not a single word, just sat at the dining table flipping through the folder Eric had helped prepare. The paperwork was nearly done. Divorce proceedings set in motion. I had already made my peace. Eric, to his credit, handled it better than I expected. He didn't cheer me on, but he didn't stop me either. Maybe because he saw the look in my eyes and realized it was too late to talk me down. Charles kept trying to negotiate, tried to offer more time, more explanations, more promises I'd heard before. But I didn't want money. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. I took almost nothing. The house, I let Eric and Julia keep it. The joint savings split clean down the middle. The furniture, the wedding gifts, the photos on the wall, I didn't touch any of it. All I wanted was my peace, my time, my freedom. The day we signed the papers, Charles looked at me like I was a stranger, like he still couldn't believe I was really walking away. But I didn't flinch, because while he was losing a housekeeper, a caretaker, and a cover story, I was finally getting myself back. And to me, that was worth everything. A few months passed, peacefully, quietly, just how I liked it. Then one afternoon, Eric called. His voice was low, hesitant. "Dad's in the hospital. He had a fall. He's been asking for you." I don't know what made me go. Curiosity maybe, or closure. When I walked into the hospital room, Charles looked smaller, older, fragile in a way I had never seen before. His leg was in a cast, his arm in a sling. But the moment he saw me, his eyes lit up like none of it had ever happened. He reached out a shaky hand. "Linda, do you remember your beef stew? I've been craving it." I smiled, leaned in close, looked him right in the eyes, and whispered, "Karma always finds your address, Charles." Then I turned and walked out, not bothering to look back. But just as I reached the hallway, I heard her. Natalie, screaming inside the room, her voice shrill and cracking. "You gave your son everything. What about me? I stuck with you. I took care of you." Charles didn't answer. Or maybe he couldn't. I didn't stay to hear the rest, because that wasn't my scene anymore. That wasn't my mess to clean. And for once, it felt damn good to leave someone else behind. Now Grace and I share a little white house by the sea. Just the two of us. No shouting. No walking on eggshells. No pretending. We paint when we feel like it. We dance in the kitchen when our favorite oldies come on. We travel whenever the mood strikes, weekend road trips, spontaneous cruises, even a painting retreat in Italy last fall. We cook when we want to. And when we don't, we order in and eat straight from the boxes under fuzzy blankets on the couch. No judgment. No rules. Some nights, we sit by the window with glasses of red wine watching the tide roll in. We talk. Or we don't. The silence is finally soft. One night we were curled up watching Roman Holiday for the 10th time when Grace leaned over and whispered, "You know, people say women like us are just bitter." I reached out, took her hand, and smiled. No one's born bitter. Life does that, but we're not bitter anymore. I squeezed her fingers gently. "We're free." She let out a breathy little laugh. And I did too, because for the first time in our lives, we really were.